A new printer has made its way onto the shelf and even kicked the Mark IV off of its marble slab. Qidi sent over this X-Plus 3 a couple weeks ago for me to review, and I've been using it ever since, and I want to share that with you guys as best as I can. Now, this printer actually had a bit of a rough start. Cloud42 did a video talking about a laundry list of problems that this thing had, but Qidi watched his video, took the printer off the market, fixed everything that he had said in his video, and re-released it. And this is actually part of the reason I was very interested in this printer to begin with, because a company that will take the feedback of the people that use the printer, address the problems, and fix them is something that deserves respect in my opinion. So I wanted to check out the product now that they've fixed it. So I don't want to talk about any of that in this video other than mentioning it here, and I want to talk about the printer in its fixed state, the way I received it. I'll put a link in the description to his video, and he's actually unlisted the original video, so you don't find it when you search, but it's there if you want to see what was originally up with this printer. Other than sending me this printer for free, Qidi had absolutely no input into this video, so I'm going to give you guys as much of an unbiased review as I can. I want to say a big thank you to Qidi for sending me this printer, and let's get into it.
So this printer is pretty neat, especially at a middle-of-the-road price point, like just over 600 bucks. It has some features that other printers just don't have. So it's Core XY, it has a bed that's supported by 4 smooth rods and is driven by 2 lead screws. It has a built-in chamber heater, which is really awesome. It's fully enclosed, comes with a textured build sheet. It has a chamber filter fan as well as an auxiliary fan for extra cooling. It has an inductive sensor for bed mesh. It has a 280 by 280 by 270 millimeter build volume. The hot end goes up to 350 Celsius. The built-in chamber heater goes up to 65 degrees Celsius. It has Wi-Fi and a built-in accelerometer to enable input shaping. It comes with Clipper pre-installed, and it has a touch screen here on the front for you to interface with the printer.
So first off, this thing is massive. I mean, the Mark IV is sitting here beside of it, and you can see I could probably even fit this thing inside of the Qidi. And I have a shot here of actually my V0 fits in this thing. So it's big. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It has a big build volume, which is great, but it's something you should take into account if you're gonna buy this, because it might not fit where you want it to. So I think that that's something to take into consideration when looking at this printer. In the box, you will get some extra goodies, and they even give you this goodie box to go along with it. You'll get the spool holder, which I have back there, some desiccant to put in it, an Ethernet cable, a spare hot end that's hardened steel so you can print abrasive materials, some basic tools, and even a little needle for filament clogs in your extruder, and a scraper. They include half a roll of PLA and then all the necessary things like the top hat, the build plate, and this special paper to do your Z offset. So after unboxing this thing, I put on my weightlifting belt and deadlifted this thing onto my bench. The first thing you have to do is remove all the shipping protection that comes in this thing, like zip ties and foam. They give you pretty good instructions like on the printer itself, and when you turn it on for the first time, the screen will actually guide you through taking all of that stuff off as well, which is actually really nice, because you get to see pictures of what it is that you're supposed to remove. But there's a lot of it in there, which is a good thing, because this thing should be well protected during shipping, but you need to make sure you get your cutters out because the zip ties that they use on this thing are beefy. Then it was on to the initial setup through the screen, which one of the steps is setting your Z offset, which is where you use this special paper. It's made out of plastic, but that means it's heat resistant and it's repeatable. You always know what the thickness of this is versus using a piece of paper or something. So I finished up the Z offset and I went about printing. So since this came with half a roll of PLA, that's what I started with. And I fired up the Benchy G code that's built into this thing. And just like the X1, this thing is tuned for speed. When you do this built-in Benchy, it is fast, but it looks surprisingly good. Especially with how fast this printed, I'm actually pretty pleased. The overhangs came out pretty good, and the layer consistency up the print is also pretty good. So I printed a couple more things in PLA, including some models that I design and sell because I know what they should look like, and I have no complaints. For all of these prints, I just use the 0.2 millimeter layer height profile and the PLA profile that are just built into the slicer, which I guess brings us into the slicer itself, Qidi Slicer. So jumping into the slicer, this thing is based off of Prusa Slicer, so it's pretty much exactly what you would expect with any other slicer that's based off of Prusa Slicer, which is most of them. These first 3 tabs are everything you'd see in those other slicers, and nothing here surprised me. But the interesting thing is the device and guide tabs. So there's a device tab, which actually lets you access the fluid interface to control the printer, which is really nice. You could access this from your browser by just putting in the IP address in the port, but just having it here in the slicer, so that way you can slice your print and then just move over and see what it's doing, is really nice, and I actually like this a lot. The last tab here is a guide tab, which takes you over some basic things that if you are newer to printing, you might not know about. And each of these is going to be just a little GIF explaining what you should do. And they even have some calibration tabs here about flow rate and pressure advance. While it's not fully comprehensive and there's still a bit of broken English, it's still nice to see. So before we get into more of these tests, I do want to circle back and talk about Z offset. After going through the initial setup, it wasn't exactly dialed in, and that's to be expected. So I figured I would have to baby step this thing a little bit. So I went into the fluid interface and started baby stepping it while I was doing some prints. And I figured, hey, if I baby step this thing, it'll give me the option to save and reset Clipper, and that'll get saved. And it doesn't. So the long and short of it is, when you want to baby step your printer and adjust your Z offset, you need to do it on the screen. And you can do it while it's printing, and you can rerun your Z offset calibration, but you need to make sure you do it on the screen, because when you reboot the printer, when you power cycle it with the switch on the back, that screen will re-inject stuff into Clipper every time you turn the printer on. This is a bit annoying, but once you understand that, you can get your Z offset dialed in, and you can see my Z offset here, 0.015 millimeters, and I never have to touch it again. So besides just printing PLA, what I really wanted to test was this thing's claim to fame in that it has a built-in chamber heater. So I grabbed some Bambu Labs ASA, which is what I had on hand, and I printed a few models that I thought would be really good tests for ASA and testing this heated chamber. I'll provide all of the models that I can provide in the description, but do note that some of these models I can't share, so if you don't see them in the description, that's why. So I printed a few different models to test different things with each one. The first thing I did was this box that I designed in different sizes to test printing bigger objects and some overhangs to see if the objects would warp and if the heated chamber would help. Then I printed this little test print so that way I could check my first layer and my top layer, which you can see on this one, my top layer wasn't so great. So I was able to use this to help dial that in. I used this Snorlax model because it has a lot of angles, which is good for testing, and these feet in the front are pretty prone to warping up, so I could test that. Honestly, I just printed this tea light candle holder for fun. I'm actually probably going to use this, so there's that. I printed this directional overhang test, which tests overhangs in every direction, so I could dial in my speed, accelerations, and cooling. And then I printed this little rock face overhang test that also helped to dial in the cooling and speed and accelerations of this printer. I ran some of these prints on my X1 as well. This is also in Bambu Labs ASA, so I tried to keep it kind of an apples to apples comparison, and I'll show the comparisons between how the Qidi did and how the Bambu Labs X1 did. So the first thing I did was just raw dog a huge version of this box that takes up almost the whole build plate with a 50C heater temp and the built-in profiles again. And it did not come out that great. It warped on the corners, and I'll do some close-ups. And it even split the layers because there was almost no layer adhesion. And when it warped, you know, it wasn't at the exact right height, so this top just did not print very well. So I had to go about tuning this printer, and that's what all of these prints here beside me are for. And I'll go through what I learned along the way and where I ended up. And one of the first things that I discovered about why this thing warped is actually that chamber filter fan that's in the back that presumably filters some of the air in the printer and exhausts maybe cleaner air out, was actually causing enough of a draft around the prints to cause them to warp. So I ended up turning that off for all the subsequent prints. I ended up bumping the heater up to 60 Celsius, switched to a 0.25 millimeter first layer height, dialed in my Z offset so that I knew I was getting good adhesion to the bed, and I was finally able to get things to stick and not warp through the whole print. And since I discovered all of that and tuned it out, I haven't had to mess with it, and I've been getting my prints sticking to the bed every time. And this is awesome because it's something I can't even do on my X1. I have a G10 plate on that thing, which has really good adhesion. And when it's fully enclosed and during a long print, the X1 will actually hit 50 degrees Celsius internal temperature, which is pretty close to the 60 degrees that this thing was heating to. And even then, without some kind of assistance on the bed, I will still occasionally get prints that warp in the X1. And so because things still warp on the X1, I will end up using a brim to solve the problem, which is really a band-aid and not a fix. So I tested this again to make sure what I did was actually correct. So I printed a series of these Snorlax models with various settings. The first one I did was with no chamber heater, so it still gets hot in there, but not as hot as it would if you actually use the heater, with the chamber fan, the exhaust fan, on, and this one warps. Then I used the heater and the exhaust fan, so it got hot, it got up to 60°C, but the exhaust fan was still on, and this one warped. And then I printed with the heater on and the exhaust fan off, and this one didn't warp. So I've confirmed that the heater in there actually does help. So this is awesome. The biggest selling point of this printer, in my opinion, is the heater. And it actually does what it's supposed to do, so that's really nice. From there, I really wanted to tune overhangs and bridges, because this printer, and pretty much every printer on the market, you have to tune and slow things down if you really want to print well, especially overhangs. So I started by redoing input shaper on the printer, which they allow you to do through the screen and through Fluid, and I'll put the graphs on the screen, and I'm actually really impressed by these graphs. You see one clear spike, which means that the body of this printer is rigid, and that's a really good thing. But what these graphs tell us is that the acceleration numbers that they provide are really high, and I probably don't recommend printing at that high of accelerations. I don't print that high of accelerations on my X1, which also claims the same thing, but we have some data here from these input shaper graphs that tell us where we can print, so I put that into the configuration in Fluid. And I also dropped my square corner velocity. I didn't do any tuning on this, but I dropped it to what I think is a more reasonable number to help sharpen up my corners. I then dropped my speed and accelerations down to crazy low, like less than 100 millimeters per second speeds and less than 4K accelerations. Even though Input Shaper says I can print as high as 6,000 something accelerations, I wanted to start low and work my way up. So I started printing all of these directional overhang models while bumping up my speed until I was printing as fast as I could without sacrificing the quality of these prints. And I was led to a kind of disappointing conclusion. I was never actually able to get this model to print perfectly. I ran this on my X1 as well, and I was able to get this model to print pretty dang well. It went pretty much all the way up in most directions and was able to maintain the overhang. There's still a bit of inconsistency here, but it definitely looks better than the Qidi, and I spent a lot of time printing this. I even went and added this printer manually to Super Slicer so I could get a little bit more granular control with the settings that I was putting into the slicer, and even then, I still couldn't get this thing to come out perfect. Either way, I moved on to this rock face model, which also has some pretty brutal overhangs. And the results here are a little less disappointing. I was actually getting kind of similar results to what my X1 was able to put out. The overhangs on this are brutal, and ASA requires less cooling than PLA does. And overall, I don't think that these prints are awful. They could be a little better, and maybe if I spent some more time tuning with my speeds, accels, and cooling, I could get a little bit of a better result, but for now they leave a little bit to be desired. And then I thought, well, hey, maybe I don't know what the heck I'm doing. So I ran some of the stock profiles again, just to test, and they came out pretty bad. So I do think that this printer requires a bit of tuning if you want things to come out perfect. But hey, like I said, most printers do. They don't all come optimal out of the box. So where does this leave us? Is this a bad printer? By no means is this thing a bad printer, especially for the price. And especially because it comes with something that no other printer comes with, which is an integrated heater. And I showed that the integrated heater actually does help when you print materials like ASA. So that's a big plus in my opinion. Is it perfectly tuned out of the box? No. But again, most printers aren't perfectly tuned out of the box, especially for the price. I would really not expect something for $600 in a consumer range to come out of the box with completely optimal settings, especially when I'm not using their filament to do all my tuning. So this isn't really a negative for me, but it's something to be aware of. So would I recommend this printer? If you want to print more than PLA, you want to go to PETG, ASA, nylon, and the carbon fiber variants of these, then yeah, I would recommend this thing. It's relatively cheap, it comes fully enclosed from the factory, it has the heater, and it totally has the capability to print pretty fast, especially with PLA. So I think this thing really does compete with, say, a P1S or a Creality K1, although I don't know if the Creality K1 is even in the same race. Where this printer falls flat for me though, is the clipper installation and the frickin' spool holder, dude. We'll get to the spool holder in a second. But the clipper installation, it's a problem that all of the printers like this that come with clipper installed have. And it's that the clipper install is like really bad. The macros are pretty bad. The version of clipper is like really out of date. And the way they implement it is just not great. All of the printers that come with clipper have these screens. And these screens do way more than you think they do. And they inject things into clipper every time you turn them on. And it's kind of annoying. It's never going to be like when you install clipper on your own machine like you do on a Voron or something like that. So this is something to be aware of. I don't think it's the biggest negative in the world. It doesn't stop me from recommending this printer, and it wouldn't stop me from buying a printer like this. But again, it's something to be aware of, that it's never going to be like a clipper installation that you do yourself on something like a Voron or anything else. But I do want to talk about the dang spool holder. So the spool holder goes on the back, and you can see how big this printer is, and I feel like most people are going to put it in a place similar to this, on a shelf or something near a wall, and if you want to change your filament, you have to get up and do the old reach around and get back here, and I can barely even reach back here, especially because I've got stuff all around it. So I end up, and I don't know if you can see it, I'll do another shot, putting the spool holder here beside of it, which is fine for me. I don't know. I just don't like this process, and I have been absolutely spoiled by the AMS system on my X1. So I know that this is a minor gripe, and you're probably watching this and going, why the heck are you complaining about this? But it's my video and I want to complain about it. And the spool holder is nice because it encloses your spool and seals pretty tight and actually allows you to hold desiccant in the bottom, which is awesome. So anyway, that's my spiel on my nitpick of this printer, which is the dumbest thing ever, but it's something that annoys me. In the grand scheme of things, this isn't the worst gripe. I ended up just leaving the spool holder unattached and to the side, and on printables you can find some models that actually put the spool holder on the side, which I would definitely recommend if you get this thing. So let's wrap this whole thing up. If you're looking for a printer that can print more technical materials, especially the carbon fiber variants of those materials, and you're looking for a medium price range, not too cheap, not too high, then I definitely recommend this thing. I've been using this thing in rotation for doing my prints that I sell and for my personal use, and I've been using it as much as I can since I got it, and I've been pretty impressed. And if you watch this entire thing and you are thinking about picking one up, feel free to use my affiliate link down below. This thing is a solid printer, and I mean that literally. The input shaper graphs can't lie. It has pretty decent hardware, and it has pretty decent software. It's not without its pitfalls, but I don't think that the cons outweigh the pros. So yeah, I definitely recommend this printer if you're looking for something like this. With all that said, a big thanks again to Qidi for sending this printer out to me. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and if you're planning to pick one up, or anything else that you'd like to see me test on this printer in a subsequent video. I wanted to do some carbon fiber filament, but to be honest, I couldn't afford it. So maybe I can do that in the future. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and remember, you can forget all of this tuning crap if you just subscribe, because your prints will always come out buttery smooth. I'll see you guys in the next one.